Hi everyone, this is Selvi. Today's topic is related to sprint and how sprint gets executed. So first, what is sprint? Sprint is a time-boxed period in which Scrum team works and implements the set of work items and deliver the working product. Here some keywords we need to remember. One is time-boxed period. Second one is executing work items. Third one is working product. How this is happening? So what is a time boxed period? Time boxed period is nothing but sprint is for, it can be for 10 working days or it can be for 15 working days. So it is a time boxed period. Only for that particular period we will plan the work items, we will implement those work items, and the last day of the sprint we will deliver that working product. In the first day of the sprint, we call it a sprint planning event. We will see separately the sprint planning event in a separate episode. But the first day of the sprint is the sprint planning event, where we will be making the sprint backlog ready for the team. We have already discussed about sprint backlog in our previous episode. And in the sprint planning event, we will be discussing the sprint goal. First thing, for a sprint, at least a goal should be associated. What is a goal? Why are we doing this sprint? What is the expectation of this sprint? That is nothing but a goal. A sprint can have multiple goals also. Whatever the sprint backlog that we are creating, that backlog items should be always aligned with the sprint goal. For example, this sprint, the team is going to deliver the working product related to search functionality in the categories option. That means all the stories and the work items will be mostly concentrating on the search functionality related implementation. That is the goal of the team to deliver as part of the sprint. In addition to that, there are also chances it can have multiple goals. Implementing search functionality can be one goal, and ensuring the feasibility study of some other functionality, like integration and functionality with another module. So 2 goals also can be possible for a particular sprint. So now we saw sprint planning event in which the sprint backlog gets created, and the sprint backlog items are all aligned with the sprint goal, where sprint goal can be a single or multiple goals associated in it. What are the other prerequisites to start the sprint? For when we are making the sprint backlog available, the sprint backlog is set of work items that team is committing. How they are committing? Let's consider a very simple example so that it will be very easy for us to understand. I am going to a wedding party where the dinner is set in the buffet mode, which means I can go and select the items. There are n number of items available, but I am going to choose the items, the food items, based on my taste. Whatever the priority I have, I have a lot of wishes to have different items, but I have some priority wish list. That is point number 1. Point number 2 is the capacity that I can have. And the third one is according to the item whether it is ready to eat or not. If they are preparing something and it is not ready to the table, even though I wish to eat, I cannot eat it because the item is not available for eating and it is not available on the table to serve. So point number 1 is the priority wish list. I have to pick the food items. Second one is capacity from my side to pick the food items. And the third one is what are the items which are ready to eat. Those items alone can be picked by me. Same thing happens in the sprint backlog also. Even though there are n number of items available in the product backlog, and based on certain conditions alone, these items will be pulled to the sprint backlog from the product backlog by the team. Even though product owners suggest what are the items that he or she feels that it is in the priority and should be covered, still always team has concerns and they can share their concern with respect to certain topics. What are those topics? First thing, according to the priority, the item should be pulled. Always look for the items on the top of the product backlog list, which means the items that are on the top are the work items that possess high business value. Priority taken care. Second one, what is the capacity of the team? The next 10 days, if that is the length of the sprint, next 10 days, what is the capacity available in the team? Can I eat 2 persons food? No, I can have only what I have the capacity to manage. Similar way, the team can manage only the capacity what they have. So how many work items that they can plan, accordingly they will be picking it up. So the second thing is all related to the capacity. And third item is definition of ready, whether the work items are meeting or not. Why it is required definition of ready? The reason is, if definition of ready is not met, that means there are still some kind of dependencies or some clarity is missing or some kind of missing topics in those work items, which means either it may not have the complete clarity or we are not in a position to estimate, or it is missing some wireframes, or it is not having clear acceptance criteria. Maybe because of some reason we have not yet met the definition of ready. In that case, if we pick those items, we are going with something like we are not really ready but still we are working. That may end up in some kind of abnormal situations as blockers. So pick the items that are with high priority. Second one, according to the capacity, plan the work items in the sprint backlog. And third one is all about whether the items have met the definition of ready. Ensure that all these items are aligned to the sprint goal what we are capturing, so that we are now ready with the sprint backlog. We will see in detail what is sprint planning event and what is capacity planning activity separately. Now sprint backlog is ready. We are starting the sprint. This sprint backlog is valid for the lifetime of this particular sprint. Which means if sprint is for the time box period of 10 days, at the end of the last day, that means on the 10th day, the sprint backlog also gets done. When I say done, it is not all the work items will be moved to done. It is nothing but the sprint backlog's life is done, regardless of the status of the work items in it. Which means the sprint backlog items that we are working, team will be working on each and every item on every single day. Development will be happening, testing related activities will be happening, documentation related activities will be happening. All the things will be happening. At the end of the 10th day, whatever may be the status of the particular work item is, it can be a defect which is not fixed at all, it can be a story which is not completed at all. Whatever may be the status, the sprint will end. for any reason the sprint will not be exceeded. If it is for 10 days, on 10th day, whatever may be the status of the work items, the sprint will be done, which means the sprint backlogs work is also done. And if the work items are already completed, then it will go back to the product backlog with the status called done. If the work items are not completed, it will go back to the product backlog with the status maybe in progress or not started, whatever may be the status. In the upcoming sprint, according to the priority and according to the details and according to the product owner's vision on the sprint goal, the relevant items that had been moved, those will be picked up in the upcoming sprints. So whenever there is a work item that is not completed in a particular sprint, which has been committed by the team, if the team is unable to complete, that means we have a spillover. When team commits on the sprint backlog, when I use the word commit, that means team is telling, okay, we are fine with the sprint backlog. We know that this is of high priority. We understand that the capacity is matching to pick up these work items, and we know that definition of ready is also met, and this is a sprint backlog. We are committing and going to work on this for the next 10 days and deliver the working product. If they are unable to deliver the working product for any of the work item, that is called a spillover. Now, we used initially 3 terminologies. One is the time boxed period that we have seen, 10 days, and the second one is execution of work items by implementing the functionality. So that is what we are doing as a team on the sprint backlog items. The team is working on implementing the functionalities relevant to the work items that we have committed. And third one is working product. So when I say working product, on the 10th day, whatever the team is delivering, that is if it is matching the definition of done. So definition of done is another checklist that we have already identified. So this work item, if it is meeting definition of done checklist, that means product owner is ready to accept that particular work item, and that means the work item is moved to done state. How to pick up the items for sprint backlog? There is a checklist that is nothing but definition of ready. Similar way, once we are completing as a team, for the product owner to accept that work item, we have a checklist called definition of done. So this is how definition of ready and definition of done is being used in the normal scenario. So in a nutshell, sprint is a time-boxed period in which the Scrum team works on the work items that are going to deliver the working product at the end of the time-boxed period. For executing the work items, we use something called a sprint backlog, which is a subset of the product backlog, which is being derived with the help of 3 factors: priority, definition of ready, meeting definition of ready, and third one is the capacity of the team. And all these items are aligned to the sprint goal. Now team will be working on the particular sprint backlog items, implementing it through the period, that is the time box period, for 10 days, and at the end of the sprint backlogs work is done, which means regardless of whatever the status of the work item, sprint backlogs life is done. And at the end, if the working items, whatever that we were doing, is matching the definition of done, that means the work items are moved to the done state by the product owner, as he or she will be accepting the work item. If it is not, then it will be called as a spillover. I hope this episode would have clearly explained the sprint and its relevant things. Thanks everyone for listening. Happy learning and stay tuned.